So June 2022 was absolutely stacked with games, sequels, collections, retro revivals, DLCs, it just didn't seem to stop. One game in that bunch to pique my interest was a new entry in the Pocky and Rocky series. While I've only played the first game on Super Nintendo, I've got a lot of memories playing with friends and family. It was among the first batch of games I ever played, and while it took nearly 2 decades, my brother and I finally beat it at the start of 2020, and that felt really good. So yeah, I was excited to hear about Pocky and Rocky Reshrined and wanted to go in as blindly as possible. I did skim over a few reviews and everything seemed to check out for a good time. By the end of June, I got it off the eShop and my brother and I were ready for some classic co-op fun, only to find that a co-op option wasn't there. At this point, we were super confused, so I looked it up and was shocked to learn that free mode, as it's called, was locked behind beating story mode, and we were instantly deflated. If the original is known for something other than its asking prices on eBay, it's the multiplayer. Sure, you can play it solo, but that prompt saying you can try too just drives home how much better it would be if you had a friend at your side. The Reshrined trailers didn't even hint at this change. They showed co-op as if you could play it right out the door. Now, in the game's story, there are several playable characters who show up at certain points, and I get the narrative might suffer if someone showed up where they didn't belong, but the story was nothing special, and it got so complicated with time travel shenanigans I checked out halfway through. There's a lot of exposition dumps and some cutscenes went on for 5+ minutes, almost as long as the level itself. And it all had me thinking, this story was that important you locked out one of the game's main draws for it? It's like if Cuphead's co-op was gated because Mugman was kidnapped and you couldn't save him until the end. At that point, I say go back to the drawing board so we're not swapping the controller each time one of us dies, which is in fact what we did here. If I knew that earlier, I don't think I'd have bought it when I did, but the few reviews I saw never brought this up, and I think that's because they were done by someone who knew co-op was there but didn't have anyone to play with. There is another way to unlock co-op, and that's by collecting 10,000 coins in the story mode. But trust me, that's not happening on your first go unless you're actively trying to kill yourself. The in-game count stops at 999, though it's shown in full in the options menu, and yeah, I was nowhere close to 10,000. Going back to the game's roster, you'll control 4 throughout single player, but to unlock the 5th character for free play, you have to beat story mode a second time, even though this character has no role in the story. The game can be beaten in about 2 hours if you're decent enough, and it saves your progress via checkpoints and with every beaten level. However, free mode doesn't save your progress at all. It's back to level 1 if you quit. You may get the luxury of playing with a friend, but you're gonna do it in one sitting. Free mode also does away with cutscenes, so if you went down the road of beat story mode and then bring your friend along, they'll have no context for anything. Like, what's the setting here? Who is this character? Why did the black mantle turn into a blonde-haired woman? There's no in between. You either sit through the story or you get none whatsoever. Reshrined also has an extra easy mode with infinite lives, unlocked after getting 3,000 coins. Pocky and Rocky is also known for being pretty tough, so I'm surprised this wasn't available from the start. Most other games unlock a harder mode when you beat them, and I don't see much reason to play this on an easier mode after being forced to get good. Maybe if I was bringing a novice friend along, but shockingly, this mode is single player only. Now, if you've kept tabs on Natsume the last few years, you'll know they've made some head-scratching decisions with another retro revival. For 2016's Wild Guns Reloaded, that had multiplayer out the box, but it was a complete botch job. All players share the same life count, the difficulty setting is tied to the number of players, with some levels only accessible on certain difficulties, and unlike the original, there are no continues. I know there's some complete psychopaths who think that's fun, but for the majority of us, it's not. A friend told me he busted this out at a Christmas party, thinking it'd make for a great time, but all that, coupled with some being unfamiliar with Wild Guns, made multiplayer quote-unquote impossible. Oh, and Reloaded has a beginner mode with infinite lives right out the gate, but Pocky and Rocky doesn't? What? Natsume, Tango, I need to know who's making these decisions, but don't worry, I just want to talk. I just want to talk. Were you hopped up on something during the planning phases? Maybe on some Pocky and Rollin' Rocky? Did you test these games with average human beings? I don't know what you guys think constitutes as serious fun, but I'll tell ya, some of these choices just aren't at all. I remember the original let players share lives when they went through their own stock, and how the slide move bounced you around like a pinball if you collided with your partner. There was also a cheat code that let you select whatever level you wanted to play. That was serious fun, but can you explain why those aren't here? Can you say why you stayed quiet about co-op before release? And can you tell me why this sent me back $40? To bring up Cuphead again, as Reshrined and The Delicious Last Course came out within a day of each other, the latter cost me about $10, and I got much more playtime and value out of that. Heck, buying the whole Cuphead package still costs less than Reshrined, so if you're in the market for a co-op shoot-'em-up style game, I say go with Cuphead right now. I suppose that's what I get for blind faith, but I would have never guessed in a million years they'd do what they did with Reshrined. As a game, it has a solid foundation, the music's great, the sprite artwork is great. If you asked me if this was a good game, I'd say yes, and when it meets all its requirements, I'm sure it's even better, but that structuring is a serious deal breaker. And what stings the most is that no official sources gave any sort of warning about this. I'm sure if they did, some wouldn't have bought the game right away, like me. So if you haven't bought this yet, wait for a sale, and if the original Pocky and Rocky ever shows up on Switch Online or somewhere else, play that first before jumping into the remake. This series dates back to the 1980s, and the one from 92 might still be the strongest overall package. To be 100% crystal clear, this is less of a review and more of a PSA. I wasn't planning on making a Pocky and Rocky video until I noticed not many people were bringing up what I thought was important, especially if you play a lot of co-op games. While I'm glad to see the series back in action, I feel it should have been handled a lot better. I also might have made this to get some money back on that purchase, but I'll never tell. Okay, so future me here, and as I was putting this video together, I kid you not, Natsume has put out a cheat code that unlocks co-op right from the start. Now that is an improvement, but it just proves my point even more. They realized how stupid that was to begin with. You might say, oh, it was only a month of waiting, but remember, this came out in Japan back in April, 2 whole months before it came stateside. I'm sure there's some Japanese fans who were befuddled longer than I was. And yeah, better late than never, I suppose, but this little band-aid doesn't fix the problems I had with what was given to me. I already played the game how they wanted me to, and my opinion is still valid. And who's to say Natsume won't do something like this again? So to those who haven't got it yet, there's more reason to, but still, $40 is a bit steep, so wait for a sale and consider yourself lucky. Man! But anyway, what do you guys think about all this? What are your thoughts on Reshrined, and if you bought it when it originally came out, either in Japanese or English, how did that structuring affect you? Or what have your experiences been with some of Natsume's other retro revivals, like Wild Guns or Ninja Savior's Return of the Warriors? I've heard some things about that remake too, but I personally don't know much about the series. But however you feel, you can share them with me in the comments below. I'd love to read them. And remember to check all my social media outlets, my Patreon page where I got behind the scenes blogs on stuff, and all that other stuff I always go on about. And with all that said, I'll see you guys next time. Later!